I'm so happy you said that because a guy like Cabiel, he doesn't get talked about enough. Frank Sanchez doesn't get talked about enough, right? Like when I'm looking at the heavyweight division, when I'm looking at the tournaments that are coming into place, I'm like the first part of the tournament, right? The first fight, in my personal opinion, was AJ versus Usyk 2. Everything or a lot of things were dictated. A lot of things were planned. A lot of things were positioned. A lot of things were put into place around that particular fight happening and what the outcome was, right? AJ ends up losing. Usyk ends up getting the W for that second fight. Okay, awesome. Now the next fight coming up and rolling into play. Now we have to talk about Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz. There's a lot of weight coming into this particular fight when it comes to heavyweight division. This is a lot of y'all don't know. This is like a Grand Prix. I don't know if you guys watch MMA, but MMA, if you look at Strikeforce back in the day, Bellator does it now. One championship did it for the lower weight division for flyweight. A Grand Prix where you have a particular. Okay, this is the flyweight division. We're gonna have a tournament. These guys fight these guys, and then whoever keeps winning, they're going to fight the best at the end of it. Like, that's what I see happening in this particular boxing heavyweight division right now, without it being said, but you can look at it that way and how it's presented. So now we had Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz. Ruiz ends up being Luis Ortiz. So Usyk beats Joshua. Usyk is the top dog. Now Andy Ruiz beats Luis Ortiz. Now Andy Ruiz is in a position where he can demand certain fights, and he's already demanding, I want the Deontay Wilder fight. Next up, we're going to have Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce. Whoever wins that fight, I promise you is going to call out AJ. Quote me here. Whoever wins Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce, they're going to call out AJ. And then we have Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius. Andy Ruiz will probably be in attendance for that fight. Whoever wins that fight will fight Andy Ruiz. So everything is in place. But I love that you brought up Agate Cabiel versus Frank Sanchez. No, that's not in the play. But why it would be a great fight is because some of these other heavyweights need to get their shine, because I think a guy like Agate Cabiel, Frank Sanchez should be talked about more. A guy like Jared Anderson should be talked about more. You know what I'm saying? Like, these guys should be talked about more, because Daniel Dubois, like these are the guys who are like sitting at the cusp or right on the outside looking in, like, I want to get into this heavyweight tournament. It's like what World Boxing Super Series used to do before they got shut down on that bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Derry Panett went on to say, there is much better qualities of heavyweights now than the Klitschko's era. Yeah, absolutely. Let's even break that down even a little bit more. It's not only that there's better quality of heavyweights, but the market of combat sports have opened up so much that there's been pressure putting on boxing. And what I mean by that is, I just learned, the other night, Sunday, we had I wish I remembered his username, but he came in, he said, I got put on the boxing from KSI versus Logan Paul. And I was like, I was thinking, man, you don't know shit. But as he kept talking, like, he knew his shit. So it's almost like the ability to see, distribute, learn information. There's an appreciation to boxers' skill level that wouldn't have been able to be appreciated in the Klitschko era because the internet wasn't around. And that's what I'm loving. Also because of competition. People watching MMA, depending on what organization, PFL, UFC, One Championship. We're seeing how these other organizations, when it comes to combat sports, even though it's not boxing, is running what they're doing, and they're putting the best against the best. So that put pressure on boxing. COVID put pressure on boxing as well. And so now we're in a position where we see some of the, in my opinion, we see some phenomenal heavyweights putting themselves in a position where they don't need to be in. Andy Ruiz didn't have to fight Luis Ortiz. They did it. Joshua didn't have to fight Usyk for the second time, but he did it. He could have easily took a fight in between. He could have delayed the second fight, went on a 4-5 fight winning streak, put himself in a position where now Usyk is still the championship and saying, well, I deserve the belt. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we really look at how things are going right now in the boxing community, it's really different and unprecedented if you really want to look at it. Because it's almost like we're seeing boxers starting to understand how important it is to submit their legacy now, because it's starting to shift because we have so much access to information where we're judging these boxers on a much higher level critique, because we're saying, hey, guys, we know how good you are, but we also have enough information in our hands to know that if you don't want to take that fight with that particular boxer, either you're ducking or your promotional company isn't giving enough leeway to make it happen. And that's going to affect the boxer's legacy in the long run. It's different than beforehand. Klitschko could say, well, I don't have to fight some of the best heavyweights because I don't have to. It just is not working out. And we couldn't say anything about it because we only had so much information accessible to us. Now we have it all. It's all accessible to us. So we can bash at Andy Ruiz and say, Ruiz, you were scared to fight Luis Ortiz. You don't want that fight. AJ, you don't want to fight Wilder. You know what I'm saying? It's much easier for us to put this narrative and paint this narrative because we feel like we have the information to say, hey, no, I see this right here in front of my face. That's not the case.